glad you're back.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back. Thank y'all for having me back. You know, usually I like to hang out in the crowd and shake some of y'all's hands and get to know some of you, but I'm kind of doing the COVID thing and laying low, so it's kind of weird just to stand up here and go, hey, I'm John. I haven't met most of y'all. How many of y'all have been here for other conferences? Good, that's almost half of you. I'm very glad to be back, and it's so exciting to see how many of y'all have brought your spouses here for me to change this weekend. It's going to be neat, y'all, you know, just to watch them grow, to watch them change. There's so much potential they have, and I think I can really help them there. Let's see, it was 2019 was the last time I was here, I think. Lots happened in my life since then. We have 3 grandsons since then. So I thought what I would do this weekend is I have like 600 or 800 slides of them, and we're just going to go through them. And if y'all have any questions, we'll do Q&A about, you know, what's he doing there, that kind of thing. I'm excited about this conference. I rarely get to do it. I call it Marriage 2.0. It's not my basic marriage conference. That's why on the registration it told you to go listen to the basic marriage conference. Because if you haven't, then you're going to be here this weekend going like, where's his 5 points for building intimacy? Or how are the steps to resolving conflict? Where are those? They're in the first conference, all right? This conference actually came up with not for lay people. I wrote this conference for professionals, for pastors, for church leaders. This is a conference that goes a little deeper. And in fact, this conference is going to be handy whether you're married or not married. This conference is a lot about the nuts and bolts, the gnarly guts of relationships. And this will be applicable to relationships with your mom or your friends or your snarky teenage daughter. I'm hoping it'll go across the board. But what this conference does is basically, I do a lot of marriage therapy. And this conference sort of says, if I tried to actually boil marriage therapy down, the work I do with clients, what do I see in the office? Nuts and bolts, ugly stuff. What's the stuff I'm dealing with and talking to people the most? That's this conference, okay? So if you want to find out what marriage therapy kind of sounds like, welcome, all right? If you want easy and 5 easy steps, then go. Go now while you can. Flee. Run away, right? We're going to get sort of into tough questions, like really trying to make sense of forgiveness. I've never heard anybody really try to unpack the nuances of that. That's tomorrow, number 2 tomorrow. Dealing with conflict with your spouse when they're being annoying and a jerk and difficult and don't care. Okay? I'll tell you more about that in a second. And tonight what we're going to look at is making sense of your childhood baggage that we bring into our marriages. So this is going to be a different kind of conference, all right? This isn't going to be 5 easy steps to conflict resolution. This is marriage conference on steroids, all right? So first what we're going to do this weekend is we're going to talk about our baggage. And you know what I mean by that. Basically, if you are awake at all internally, you recognize that you're bringing some junk and some fears and some longings and some needs and some injuries and some glitches from your childhood into your marriage. If you don't know that you do that, I'm really glad you're here because I've got news for you. You know, this is what your spouse has been talking about. This junk is happening all around you. A lot of the reason that we have marital stuff is that you and your spouse are stepping all over one another's little kid garbage. That's a lot of the reason that we fight. So that's what we're going to talk about first. I want to help you make sense of the baggage so you can kind of more insulate your marriage from the fact that you're really just mad at your mom, okay? Or your dad never really connected to you, so now when your husband doesn't, it feels like the end of the world. Or your mom was really critical, so when your wife says, you know, hey, honey, that didn't feel good, you blow up, like, why are you always on my case? In other words, we bring a lot of loaded junk, and you're doing this whether you know it or not. I just want you to know it, okay? Secondly, last time we talked about conflict, and we unpacked sort of the dynamics of making sense of conflict, but all that was predicated on the belief, the assumption that both of you were at least interested, that both of you were what the Bible would call repentant, that you were both saying, hey, Doc, we keep having fights and we don't want to anymore. Help us resolve our conflict, okay? This year we're going to talk about something that's sort of a pet project of mine. And I want to write a book about it one day because I think it's so interesting and so cool and because it's so powerful and because I use it all the time at the office and because I rarely get to talk about it. But this year I want to look at what do you do with conflict when your spouse doesn't care. Half of the marital work I do is with one spouse who says, my spouse won't come. They're like, that's a bunch of psychobabble. I'll talk to you any way I want. And they have kind of a jerky bully who they live with, or maybe it's their mom who's the jerky bully. But so many people have kind of a jerky person in their life who's saying critical, snarky stuff to them, and they don't know how to respond to it. And about half the marriage work I do involves teaching people that sort of taekwondo to deal with what we are in essence calling an unrepentant person in a conflict. Or just a regular person who's having an off day and taking it out on you, like I did to my wife yesterday. You know, you just have a bad mood and you just snap. I want you to know how to respond to that in a godly, powerful way, all right? So, tomorrow morning we're going to talk about conflict with what I call difficult people, which is kind of a euphemism. We can also call them jerks if you want. It's just us, all right? Anyway, finally we're going to unpack forgiveness, which is a strangely underdeveloped topic, given how fundamental it is to our faith, okay? In other words, I find forgiveness to be this very sophisticated, nuanced, complex issue, but most people, if you talk to them, kind of live in a position of where you're supposed to forgive them, right? And that's kind of as deep as it gets, okay? How about we broaden that a little? All right? That's what we're going to talk about second on tomorrow. So that's our weekend. And like I say, that has application to your marriage or to your relationship with older children or to your parents or to your coworkers. This is, in a sense, kind of a dealing with junk in relationships conference. But I think it's going to be super helpful for your marriage. So let's get started. We're going to talk about baggage, getting the baggage out of your marriage. Welcome to baggage claim, okay? Let's begin by remembering 2017. I'm sure that it's imprinted in your memories. It's been transformational to your relationships. Those who didn't listen to the conference are going to wonder what I'm talking about. But anyway, one of the things we talked about in that conference is that one of the secrets of the universe is this, that the problems in your marriage really aren't with your marriage, okay? What we said was that what I've learned from doing therapy way too long is that the real problem is that marriage requires a lot of emotional, characterological software and abilities in our hearts, and most of us are missing at least some of them. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Good. In other words, remember we said being a human is kind of like being a car. And for a car to work well, the car has to be able to do a lot of stuff. It has to be able to go, and it has to be able to stop, and it has to be able to turn. And in the South, it has to have an air conditioning, blah, blah, blah. Now, that car's fine if it's missing brakes, maybe. It's fine going down the freeway of life. But then suddenly there's a, car stopped up ahead, but I don't have any brakes. And I'm slamming on the brakes and nothing happens, and I go slamming into that Kia Soul in front of me. Now, I do that even though I don't want to do it. I'm trying real hard to not do it. The Kia Soul's not happy with me at all. This is the 10th time this week I've done it. But I'm missing something, okay? Human hearts are the same way. Same with marriage. So your wife wants intimacy with you, connection, belonging, sharing your heart. But for you, intimacy means knowing that you like watching Alabama while you're in your boxers. Like, I love you too, honey. That's sort of like sharing for you, okay? So she's like not happy. And maybe you're a bad husband, but it could be because you never were taught that ability to really be connected. Or, let's take another example. Maybe your spouse is real pushy or demanding, and it's kind of their way or the highway, and your opinion doesn't really matter that much. but you never really learn the ability to say no or to push back or to kind of exist in the relationship because you don't want to upset them. All right? And suddenly you've kind of disappeared. And we said last time that may be kind of a marriage problem, but what it actually is a you lacking the ability to be powerful and exist in the relationship problem. All right? Remember this? Now, one of the things we said about all that is the best news about it, the best news about the fact that you both have like character abilities, software, emotionally that you're missing, the best news about that is that if you struggle in your marriage, it's not because you married the wrong person or your spouse is a jerk. It's because we're both incomplete in the image of God. We just are missing software. So no one's the bad guy. Okay? You're both incomplete guys. And one of the things we talked about last time was learning together, saying, hey, you know what? I'm pretty screwed up at this. This is one of those things Cox was talking about that I'm missing. And this is one of the things that you're missing. You want to grow together? And we said, let's do that instead of fighting, okay? Now, in 2017, we called that the 4 I's. This was my little collection of stuff that you need in order to make relationships work. And this applies actually to your relationship with God. I've got a parenting book I've written. It's out front. We'll talk more about it later, but it's my model for thinking about parenting. What do you need to make life work? Well, one of them was intimacy. Can I let you in? Can I let you know my heart? Can I learn to trust you? Can I keep you in? Or am I always insecure? Can I be intimate and connected? You know, everybody thinks you're going to talk about that at a marriage conference, right? You go to a marriage conference, you talk about intimacy. All right? But marriage is more than that. There's also the issue of identity. Can I be one with you and close to you, but different from you? Can I say no? Can I be strong? If you're missing that, your marriage is going to have something missing. Imperfection was the 3rd I. Can I make sense of the ways in which you disappoint me? Can I make sense of the ways in which I know I fail without going into shame and feeling all terrible? Can I relate to you and not need to be critical about all the ways you let me down? And lastly, impulse control. In other words, can I have an emotion and not need to act out on it? Can I know I'm feeling something and not be a jerk about it? Okay? Now, we said in 2017, if you look at this list, that you probably notice 1 or 2 of these things that you might be missing. And we said the advanced students could see like 4 of them that they might be missing, okay? Either way, we said the problem is not that you're like married the wrong person or your relationship is screwed up. The problem is that we're missing these pieces, right? Okay? So here's our question for this year. Here's our question for tonight. God created us to need these things. He calls them things like intimacy. He talks about abiding, loving one another, loving your neighbors yourself, love the Lord your God. He talks about intimacy. He calls it stewardship, steadfastness, faithfulness. Choose ye this day. He talks about imperfection, humility, forgiveness, getting the log out of your eye. Okay? He talks about impulse control. In other words, managing that desire to take and instead waiting upon the Lord. He talks about these same categories. So, as we looked at that last time, we talked about how to apply that to your marriage. Here's what I want to do tonight. What happens when we have blind spots in some of these areas, which you do? If you don't know what yours is, ask your spouse. What's going to happen when we bring those into our marriages? What is that going to look like when my junk meets your junk? It's one of the biggest dynamics in marriages that are struggling, and it's actually one of the ways that I really think about marriage therapy when I'm with a couple, and I want you to know it. Okay? So let's start here. Why do we have incompleteness? Why do we have missing pieces? Why do we have injuries and junk and stuff that we bring into our marriages? Why do we have the baggage? Well, I'm a psychologist, so you're not going to be surprised when I say that, part of the problem is we all begin life as children, right? Not going too fast for you? And as you can read in my best-selling parenting book, children don't know very much, okay? In other words, everything they learn, they have to be taught. Now, since a lot of you are parents, and I'm a parent, you know that you're a screwed up parent, right? That's why I named the book Setting Parents Free, because the book is actually for parents. It's to say, get over your feeling that you need to be a perfect parent. Here's how to be a screwed up parent and still make good kids. But you know you screwed up your kids, right? And my parents screwed up me and your parents screwed up you. And as they say, if you think mama's crazy, you should meet grandma. So we all end up at the end of this broken world day having missing pieces like character flaws and longings that aren't met and losses and injuries. And then we get married, okay? And what's going to happen? Cue suspenseful music. All of those missing pieces and all of those longings are going to start to show up as kind of the phantom menace in your marriage, okay? And it's kind of like that thumb when you have a cut thumb and like everything you walk by, you hit your thumb on it, you know? It's like everything your spouse says is going to like goad that little part. In other words, and this is one of the most important things that you can ever learn about marriage, and our topic tonight, something in us will feel those missing pieces, those injuries, that junk that we bring from having broken human parents and childhoods. We're going to feel that hurt, that longing, that owie, and we're going to do one of two things in it. We're going to either look to our spouse to finally meet that unmet need. No one ever really connected with me, so at last somehow I have this feeling that you will. You complete me, you know? Or our spouse is going to trigger the heck out of it. In other words, we're going to be walking along and they're going to step on it and do like this and say exactly that thing, and you're going to be going, oh my gosh, you really are just like my dad, okay? So let's look at them briefly. One of the things we're going to do is say, ooh, can my spouse really meet this need? Can they fulfill that desire? One of my clients told me not long ago, she said, after she had done a little work, granted, after she had done a little therapy work to understand what was going on, she said, I finally realized that when I got married to him, I wasn't looking for a romantic relationship. Something in me was looking for a healing relationship. Another client who told me, she said, you know, I've always wanted to have that one hole filled. That one person who would choose me. In other words, she's searching for some place she can finally get unhurt in that hurt part. And maybe, and we all do this in our marriages. Maybe you feel like lonely and you want more intimacy. But here's your husband, okay? And he's supposed to be the one who connects with you, right? He's supposed to be the one who really gets it. You've had that longing, and he's supposed to be the one who really understands it, you know, the way you've always wanted. But he's like a dude, okay? And maybe he's going to hear you and understand, but it's not like he's going to, like, cry or anything, you know? But when he doesn't get it, when he doesn't hear you, you don't just feel sad. You feel despairing or hopeless or angry, or you bite at him, all right? And my question is, why? Because you have a bad marriage? No, because we're missing something inside of us, and something is waiting, hoping somebody else is going to finally meet that need, okay? Maybe your family never really connected like you long for. Something in us is going to hope our spouse is finally going to do that, okay? The other thing we can do with our baggage, we can look for our spouse to try to meet it, or we can get stepped on by it. In other words, our spouse is not only not going to meet our need, they're going to trigger it. So you're hanging out and your wife starts talking about her friend and her husband, and he makes like $1 zillion. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to go to Paris next weekend. And when they come back from Paris, they're going to their house on Amelia Island. Oh my gosh, it just sounds so fun. And something in you is going to get triggered. And you're going to start going, is she like thinking like this guy makes a ton of money and I don't, and like she's unhappy with me? And all of a sudden, you're going to get like this Harry Potter port key to triggered land, and you're going to get kind of quiet. And she's going to go, what? Is anything wrong? And you're going to go, no, nothing. And she's going to go, oh my gosh, are you like feeling like I'm saying you're not making enough money again? And you know where this fight goes, right? Now, why did that trigger me? Why did that hook me? Something in me heard you saying I wasn't good enough. You wish you'd married somebody who made zillions of dollars. So why don't you just go marry him? Does this sound familiar? Now, the reason that we do junk like that in our marriages is because we're bringing in unanswered question and baggage, all right? I got a client right now who always feels like he's never been good enough. So his wife will be sitting down with him and going through kind of the honey-do list, like stuff we need to get done, okay? And he immediately gets hurt, angry, defensive, like she's saying he hasn't done enough. He goes to that, nothing I do is good enough for you, all right? Now, here's the secret of the universe with him. That's not all coming from her. See, I know this guy. I've worked with him before. I know that basically his dad taught him, you'll never amount to anything. And he brought that injury to the altar. Now his wife says, oh, here's a bunch of stuff that we hadn't gotten done yet. And he immediately triggers and gets all mad. But you see where that's coming from? It's not coming from her. It's coming from inside of you, okay? In other words, the real reason that marriage is hard is that we all have pathology and limitations and junk, and we're going to do them in our marriage. You know that old fortune cookie joke, in bed? You know, you will have fame and fortune in bed, you know? Well, you will do your pathology and your injuries and your craziness in your marriage. And in bed too, but you know, that's another show, okay? So, that's my model here, okay? We're all going to come to our marriages with our junk, and we're going to, expect that our spouse will finally meet that need. I've never felt wonderful, but if you really affirm me and I feel this vibe from you that you think I'm amazing, then finally I can feel good enough. Or they're going to like replay or trigger that junk, and we're going to act them out. And if you do that, it's going to be a dumpster fire. You're going to have fights. It's going to be reactive, and you're going to be wondering, what happened? That's actually what's behind most marriage issues, okay? That we're bringing our junk into our marriage. And what I want to do this weekend, tonight, is to give you some categories for learning to spot that and decontaminate your marriage from it, okay? The problem in your marriage is not that you don't have good communication skills, all right? I can communicate very well that I hate your guts. Thank you very much, okay? The real issue is that we're all bringing this junk into our relationships. And one of the ways that I do marriage therapy is I start listening for how each spouse, what is it that's hurting them? What is it, the question that they're asking? What is it that their spouse is stepping on? I want to give you a category for that this evening and this weekend. I told you I was going to push you, right? Here's another way of saying it. I tell my clients all the time, there's actually 4 people in your marriage. I think we may have talked about this at the first conference. I usually draw this, but I can't draw on this iPad, so I'm going to imagine it. Okay, think about it like this. There's big you, and there's big her. And there's like 5-year-old you, and there's like 5-year-old her. Now, here's the secret. Big you and big her, y'all get along just fine, okay? But then you come home from work and you go, what, meatloaf again? Now, the problem is that big her doesn't hear that. Little her does and goes, oh my gosh, nothing's enough for him. And she snaps back and goes, well, if you want something else, you can cook it yourself. Now, grown-up you would be able to kind of go, wow, she's really unhappy and triggered. I need to give to her. But you didn't hear that. Little you did. And he's like, oh my gosh, she doesn't understand how hard I've been working for our family all day. And he's like, no, meatloaf's just fine. Okay, and before you know it, you two are standing there where these kids are going at each other, and you're going, what just happened? That's my point, all right? Here's another way I like to say it. Most marriages are like 2 people, both of whom have half-full picnic baskets. In other words, you got a picnic basket, and there's some good stuff in it, right? But it's got a lot missing. And so you're kind of longing. Maybe you feel lonely, or maybe you don't feel as good as other people. Maybe you're needing affirmation. Your picnic basket's missing something. And boy, are we hungry. But then you meet little Susie Q over there. And she's mighty cute. And she's got a mighty nice-looking picnic basket, you know? And I'm thinking it's full of grapes and wine and cheese and maybe a checkered tablecloth and all that. And she's, I think, going to be full of all that affirmation and like building up of my ego and telling me how wonderful I am that I've been longing for, you know? And the trick is, the sneaky part is, it's actually like that when you're dating, right? She's like, oh, you lay shoes for a living? That sounds fascinating, you know, right? And so you're thinking, man, that's a great-looking picnic basket. I want to marry her. Now, here's the problem. She's thinking the same thing. She's thinking, man, you know, he's got a really nice-looking bag of goodies over there. I bet he'll really be wanting to hear about all my feelings and the ways in which I'm hurt, and want to hear about how I'm mad at my best friend, you know. And then he's writing her poems. You know, you guys still write them poems, right? She's got a drawer full of poems. You still write poems, right? Right, okay. So now this couple's both got their eye on one another's picnic basket. This is good stuff. This is what I need. And then they get married, okay? And what happens? After the ceremony, he's going to be going, oh, boy, we're married. You can start filling my picnic basket the rest of the way up. Let the fulfillment begin. And she's like, wait, what? I thought you were going to fill up my picnic basket. Besides, I only have half a picnic basket. And if I fill yours up, mine's going to be empty. And he's like, well, what'd you get married for if it's not about meeting needs? And she's like, right, bozos, start meeting them. And you can get your own Prosecco, you know, and they're off to the races at their picnic, okay? And you're both coming to the table needful, and you both walk away angry and disappointed. Welcome to the modern American marriage. But this is why. Because there's something in us that's saying, I'm longing for something, I'm hungry for something, I'm longing for something, I want this from you. And your spouse is going, no, I want that from you. And we're both needing from each other. And we have a phenomenon that in Mississippi we call 2 ticks and no dog. But here's the secret, and here's what we're shooting for tonight and this weekend. Big you and big her love each other just fine. Y'all are great, okay? It's these little kids who are screwing up your relationship, I promise you. We've got to figure out what their deal is, what they need, what they want, how they get triggered by your spouse. One of the most powerful things you can do in your marriage is start living very consciously together with an awareness that you got 2 5-year-olds running your relationship, okay? And those 5-year-olds are going to be hoping at last you're going to tell me I'm wonderful. Ooh, John, I read that draft of the book you're writing. It's amazing. And when she says instead, yeah, it's good. I've caught some grammar errors. I just want to go, you know. Now why? Because that little kid, he wants her to like put it up on the refrigerator, you know. He wants all the adoration. Anyway, we're bringing that junk to our marriages all the time. Okay, so good news again. Nobody's the bad guy again. I want you to start thinking about your marriages as big me and little you love. We love big me and big you love each other. And these little guys and these insecurities getting in our way. Let's figure out how we can stop being victims to them all the time. You're not the enemy. Our little junk is the enemy. Let's figure out what that is and grow together. Okay? So I want to talk more about the kinds of longings, injuries, junk, and baggage that we bring into our marriages and give you some categories for thinking about it. Because the hard part of this is learning to spot it. And I'm going to try to teach you how to spot it the same way I do at the office, okay? By the way, you're each going to get an honorary PhD when you finish this conference. Because you're going to be leaving going like, whew. So hang in there. I'm proud of you. So let's define what those issues are. And by the way, this isn't all that wacky psychology stuff. This isn't like, let's find out what your mama and daddy did and blame it all on them, okay? Like we said, this is just how our brokenness plays out. What a Christian psychologist does is we want to operationalize the ways in which we're broken. The Bible makes it very clear that we're sinful, we're sinned against, we're broken, we're incomplete. God wants us whole again. one of the things psychologists do is sort of pull that apart and go, okay, let's understand what's broken. Let's understand sin. Let's understand wounds. I want to unpack it for you, okay? Now, we're going to use as our categories for understanding that the things that we need in order to do relationship well. We're going to use our 4 I's as a category for that. In other words, what's going on in those 5-year-olds? Let's start with intimacy and just use that as an example for a place that things can start to get wacky. Basically, remember what's intimacy about. God created us to where if we are alone, parts of us that are in isolation, parts of us that aren't known or seen, tend to wither. They get worse. It's not good for the man to be alone, so to speak. And when God said that, that wasn't like just the invention of marriage. It was the invention of relationship. It was God saying, I made you to need other people. Now, intimacy is just the telephone you use to call. Intimacy means I'm going to start sharing with you my heart and who I am. Okay? That's why, guys get a lot of hassle that it's the wives want intimacy and we're, dummies about it. That's not always the case at all. In fact, Norm and I are reversed. I'm kind of the touchy-feely, intimate one, and she's sort of the more bottom liner. Some of you were at the last conference, remember that. In other words, I'm the one who's like, why do you keep trying to fix it? I just want you to hear my feelings. And she's like, there's a nail in your head. Y'all seen the video? I'm like, quit watching football. Why can't we just share? I'm that guy, okay? I'm not ashamed of it either. Anyway, but that's one of the reasons your emotionally awake intimacy spouse is so unhappy if you can't do intimacy, because God created us to be connected and they feel that kind of ache, okay? Now, if we don't have connection, if I'm sharing my heart and nothing's coming back, I'm going to feel a longing, especially when you're little kids. We were created to say, let's see, what happened? I was playing with my grandson, Whit, he's 4, the other day. It was time to put up the blocks. And he goes, but I don't want to put up the blocks. And I said, I know. Putting up the blocks stinks. It's the worst part of playing, isn't it? In other words, I was just going, yeah, I get you. I was doing intimacy, okay? We're built for that. And if we don't get it, we will feel a longing there, all right? Another way to say that is, sorry, I get behind on the slides. Another way to say that is kids live their lives, they walk through their worlds asking what I call core questions of their important people in their lives. At some level, tacitly, implicitly, explicitly, overtly, covertly, they're kind of asking like, do you want to know really me? Do you care how I feel? Is it a big deal if I screw up? Can you give me kind of a vibe for that? And fortunately and unfortunately, they're getting answers all of the time to these core questions in the relationships that they have. All right? Now, if we get good answers, who you are matters. What you feel matters. I see you and love you. If we get that, then we're unstoppable, man. Jerks can be jerks to us, and we're like, whoa, who screwed up your potty training, man? It's not about me, If we get good answers to where we feel all intimate and connected and whole inside, that'd be great, wouldn't it? Problem is, there's only one guy like that, and he lives in like Montana or something, and nobody can get a hold of him. And he's actually lonely because he's the only healthy person on the planet, so he can't really identify with other people, okay? Other than that, the rest of us are pretty screwed up. Basic principle, we all come to the table in our marriage with some of these questions unanswered. And what we will do, basic principle, is if I don't have good answers to my core questions, we will continue asking those core questions of everybody in the universe. We'll ask them at work. We'll ask them at church. Did you see the way she looked at me? That guy didn't talk to me. You think he's mad? We'll ask him of the lady at the Wendy's drive-thru. We will ask them on a train. We will ask them in the rain. We will ask them in a box. We will ask them to John Cox. Okay? We will ask them all the time. We will continue asking these unanswered questions forever. And sure as shooting, I promise you, you will ask them in your marriage. And y'all will be talking about roofing the house. But there'll be something in you going like, is she happy with me? She looks mad. She just turned down another one of my suggestions. She must think I'm stupid. Or she sounds critical. Do you love me even though I've made a mistake? And now suddenly we're not talking about the roof anymore. Somebody's going, well, what's that supposed to mean? And you're like, whoa, how did we get from there to here? Okay? We all do this. What we do is we will see our marriage through the spectacles of whatever those missing pieces are. Norma came back from, we just had a new grandbaby, and she spent a week with our daughter and them, being the grandmama and taking care of the baby for a week. And she comes in the house, and, touchy-feely me, I'm like, hey. And she's like, hey. She kind of stumbles past me. And I kid you not, there was a little something in me that said, she's not glad to see you. Now, why did she stumble by me half-conscious? Because she's been taking care of a 2-week-old for a whole week. She hadn't slept all night, all right? But insecurity boy here is going to go, oh, why is she not speaking to me? Do y'all do this stuff? Am I the only one? I just want you to develop a category for it and stop dumping it on your marriage, okay? We're going to see our marriages through the spectacles of those relationships, okay? I want you to start spotting them. Here's how. Here's how we spot them. Look for the intensity. In other words, you can tell a kid need, a little kid screwed up part of you by the fact that it's usually out of proportion. In other words, when you have an interaction, like when Norma walks past me and I feel that, or your spouse says that thing and you want to snap. Or they say, have you remembered to take out the garbage? You want to go, get off my case. That intensity, those situations where 2 + 2 is equaling 10, you know what I mean? Where your reaction is a lot stronger than it really kind of should be. That's a tell. That's your tell. That's your sign that you're probably dealing with a little kid emotional need. Here's an example. A couple I saw a while back. His father left when he was a little kid. His mom sort of shut down emotionally and got all depressed. And so his family was this incredibly lonely place. And this guy's wired a little more like me. He's a real kind of emotionally aware, connecting kind of guy. Very warm, but very, very lonely. So guess what kind of woman he married? He married a hardcore left brain. Remember TCBers from the other conference? He married a problem-solving, got a no crybabies bumper sticker on her car. She don't want to hear about all those feelings. That doesn't fix anything. And oh my gosh, get away. You're totally suffocating me. Naturally, that's what he married, right? Isn't that what we do? So she's like, oh, God, get off. Oh, no, I need some space. Now, let me ask you, what happens inside of him when she pushes him away emotionally? What happens inside? He doesn't just get sad. Oh, gee, babe, I wish we'd been able to be together more this weekend. He starts to panic. I see it on his face. I'm going to be lonely forever. And then he gets mean, okay? And then he says things to her like, I wish we were closer. Is anything okay? Are you okay? Is anything wrong? And she's like, oh, my gosh, you're suffocating me. And they get in this dance where he's always trying to pursue her, all right? But do you feel his urgency in that story? Do you feel the intensity? That's a tell that I said to him, we got to figure out why it hooks you so bad when she doesn't connect with you. And we found all those injuries. If you don't do that, then he's just going to say, well, I just must have married the wrong person. She doesn't care about real intimacy at all. Okay? So with this guy, we're not going anywhere until we make sense of what his longing and what his need and what that ache is. And conversely, her aversion to need. Like, why is she so afraid to get connected? I'm interested in that too. We had to talk about that. Only if you look at what that little kid junk is, can we deal with the real intimacy issues in the marriage? We got to look at the little kid junk, okay? Here's another example. Norma wrote a book several years back on Camp DeSoto. Y'all are Birmingham, you know Camp DeSoto? Yeah, right. Norma wrote the book on it. Anyway, this was when the kids were little, and so there was a whole season of our lives together in which basically she was a mom all day, and then, cleaned the kitchen and started writing and wrote till 1 a.m, and that was kind of it. And pretty soon I start feeling real left out, right? By my count, I'm at least third at best, okay? There's mom, there's book, maybe I'm third. I don't know like that. So what does that do to my own insecurity junk? I'm like, all you do is write on that book, and, chicks dig that stuff, right? Anyway, it would have been nice for me to have asked her an adult question, like, even though you're working on your book and spending so much time there, do you still love me and care for me? That'd be a great question, but that never occurred to me. Fortunately, I was in therapy at the time, and I started really looking at, wow, what is this like needy, emotional, little kid insecure stuff going on with me? And I had to do some real work on my own to be asking, what's going on for you, John, that's feeling so unimportant to her, that's feeling so pushed away by her? How do you find connection and love in your other resources, in your body of Christ people? Where did that injury originally come from for you? How do you do some healthy grieving that you're not going to be able to have a relationship with Norma like you wish during this season? I had some questions to answer there, okay? And frankly, I wanted to answer those questions because I was sick of giving my wife all that power over my soul. All my wife has to do is X, Y, Z, and I start dancing like a marionette. I don't want my spouse to have that much power. I want to be more grounded than that emotionally, okay? This is how I want you thinking. One of the most powerful things you can do in your marriage is, and I hope you leave here tonight with at least a category together, that you and I, when we get angry at one another, when we push one another's buttons, there's some sort of trigger going on there. Let's start learning what those are together. Because they're that little kid in the relationship that's sitting in the background all the time, and I want us to start to get a handle on what those things are, okay? By the way, before we leave intimacy and attachment, the other direction we can go if we have deficits there, that was adult need. I'll get to that in a second. The other thing we can do if we have deficits there is go the opposite direction, like my dude's wife. In other words, I have injuries, problems with intimacy and connection, so I'm just going to shut down. I don't need anything. So much of touchy-feely psychobabble, man. Just go me the bottom line, all right? Now, John Wayne, that's baggage, okay? In other words, instead of becoming real needful because of your injury, you're becoming like, I don't need anything because of your injury. That's baggage. Look at that, okay? By the way, you can tell adults still need intimacy. We still need connection and belonging. You can tell it's adult, though, if you don't lose your cool. I stay cool. See like that? I want you to be like two little Fonzies, okay? And what's Fonzie like? It's cool, right? Correctamundo. Check out The Big Brain on Brett. Movie reference? Anybody know what movie? Yeah, good. Adult need is, I really want to be close. I'm too busy. I don't have it in me. I'm just flooded from work. No, and we're like, okay. Well, I'm sad about that. Can we work some time later in the week where we can, and we work out a mutual win-win connection there? But you see, I'm staying cool. Why? Because there's not a little 5-year-old inside of me screaming, okay? So we're not saying all of your needs are pathological or something, but you can tell the ones that are because they're going to get more intense, all right? I want you to learn this stuff together. I want you to develop this category together. And I want you to begin thinking about it so you can decontaminate your marriage from the little kid junk that's going on underneath, all right? You do that, and I'm going to be getting like thank you notes from this church in the future, all right? Because you're going to have marriages that aren't like pushing your buttons all the time. Let's look at another one. Identity. Remember we said there's more to relationships than just intimacy and closeness and belonging. There's also the issue of power and individuality and separateness. And can I say no to you? Can I hear no from you? Can I be me? Can I make room for you to be you? One of the things that we have to learn in our growing up, one of the things we have to do is be taught that it's legit for me to be able to say no, to be me, to be different from you. That's the reason I told Whit that day, yeah, I know it is no fun to pick up the blocks. In other words, he had to hear my no. But I also let his no matter. I said, yeah, it does stink. I get it. Okay? Now, if we don't get that sense of like, I get to be me, it's cool to be me. It's a good thing to be me. I can push back and disagree with you. We're one, but we're also two. If I don't get that, we will go one of two directions. We will either live our lives feeling controlled. Oh my gosh, get off my case. Or we're going to do the flip side and turn to people who are very controlling. Let's look at the controlled version. I have a client who grew up in a family in which her opinion never, ever mattered. If you had an opinion or a disagreement with Dad trumped everything. You don't exist. Parents are the rule. We are the boss. Be quiet, do what you're told, and that's it. Now, that whole issue of shut up and do what you're told doesn't feel very good to her. And it never got resolved. So guess what happens now when she's in a marriage and her spouse says, hey, honey, I really want us to start doing so-and-so and so-and-so. She says, oh my gosh, would you get off my case with all your rules? Now, why is she getting so amped up about that? She's bringing a lot of I've been controlled baggage in. Okay? I want to say, wow, isn't that interesting how much that triggered you? Let's find out what injury is causing that. Let's figure out what blind spot is causing that. Okay? Other direction we can go is be controlling. I had a guy and a couple, and he grew up always kind of worshipped and adored. Like in his family, he was sort of the little prince, and anything he wanted, he got. And so now he gets married, and his wife wants something and disagrees with him. Babe, I think that exit's closed. Like, I think we need to go around here. And he's like, oh my gosh, why do you have to disrespect everything I say? And for him, it's like nobody else can exist but him. And she's like, I'm just trying to exist here. But he didn't have room for that. He didn't get that category. Now, gratefully, usually those kind of controlling jerk types don't come to therapy. They're just fine being king of the world. It's their loved ones who come to therapy. But he comes to therapy, and he's been really willing to sort of look at, I do become this kind of controlling jerk. In other words, he's repentant, which will be really key for us this weekend. He's open to saying, yeah, I'm bringing like garbage that says, if you exist, that's an affront to me. What's up with that? I was talking to a woman this week who said, it was kind of sweet, kind of poignant. She said, I have really given up who I am in my marriage because I just wanted to become what he wanted me to be, because then I thought he would love me. Now, how old does she sound? Do you hear it? I want you to start listening to the parts of you that aren't grown up and that are needful. And she's growing to the place where she's saying, can I be strong enough and safe enough and loved enough to go, no, this is me. Identity, I exist, even if you're disappointed. Okay? So, we're picking up speed here. Can I do oneness and identity? And intimacy? Can I do two-ness? Can I have identity apart from you? All right? What you learned here and what you did not learn here, you will do in your marriage. Okay? That is the problem. Not that your spouse is a jerk. Let's go to the next one. Imperfection. Who doesn't have a fear of failure? You know the old Seinfeld joke? Number one phobia is public speaking. Right? Why is that? Because you're standing up here and you can look like a goob. In other words, The number one fear is shame. You know, we don't feel like we're good enough. Seinfeld goes on to say that the number two fear is death, which he says, that means given any funeral, the average person would rather be in the casket than given the eulogy. Anyway, I think I got that right. Anyway. So perfectionism. Am I good enough? Am I a failure? Are you good enough? I mean, what's more fun than being critical of your spouse? Isn't that why we got married? So we'd have somebody 24/7 to be critical to? You know, I don't like the way you did that. Okay? In our first marriage conference, we talked about how we have to have some rich experiences in our relationships that teach us that I can be screwed up or fallen or not good enough and love doesn't go away. All right? I can keep my poise. And if we learn those things, we learn that I can be imperfect and you can be imperfect and hashtag happy marriage and hashtag human race, okay? Otherwise, we're going to live in a position where I'm either going to live blaming me or blaming you. Remember blame marriages from the first conference? Now, why do we do that? Why do we live out of blame? I mean, don't you live blaming one another in a marriage? One of the things we said in the last conference is one of the reasons people don't ever resolve conflict is because the problem that they're actually trying to resolve doesn't ever get addressed. They're too busy playing kind of badness hot potato as to whose fault it was. Well, this wouldn't have happened if you hadn't have done so-and-so. Oh, me. It's me again, huh? And y'all are talking about that. And poor old Mr. Problem is over here all by himself and nobody's even paying any attention to him, which is why you've been having the same fight since college, right? Right. So why are we so oriented about blame and shame and am I bad and who's the bad guy? Well, part of that's because of the fall. We're born under the law, which means we're born with this vibe of condemnation, right? But we can learn more growing up. Like the generation that parented my generation tended to parent more out of shame. In other words, if we screwed up, it wasn't like, too bad, you go to timeout, you lose your Legos, whatever. We were like, I'm surprised at you. You know, that generation that parented us, like, I thought we raised you better than this, John Cox. You know, in other words, we were motivated by shame, okay? There's nothing screwed up about that, right? Okay? So then you get married and your wife says, oh, you forgot to take out the garbage this morning. And I'm like, God, why are you always so critical of me? And all of a sudden, I'm really loaded on you thinking that I'm bad. Maybe you want to talk to me about how I was a jerk the other day. And great, you should be able to do that. No harm, no foul. Probably should call me out. But I don't hear it as a legitimate complaint. My little 5-year-old shows up and says, she's saying you're bad. You're the bad one. She's the good one. All right? So why? Why are we so scared of that? Why are we so scared for something to be our fault? We're saved by grace, right? God loves us even in our badness, right? Right? Anybody got that trigger? Aren't we terrified of it? Don't we fight to be the right one? Think what it would do to your marriage if you recognized that that was what was going on. Hey, whoa, wait a minute. That totally triggered me. I'm feeling totally criticized. I don't know what that's about. This is getting really wacky. I'm about to blow up. What is going on? Help me figure this out. What would happen if you started recognizing with your spouse that you both got this little kid junk going on inside of you? I did one right. I've got lots of examples of how I do it wrong. Here's one that I did was right. Okay, so Norma had asked me to do some chores around the house, and I had totally not done them, okay? And so she comes to me, and I've been really busy, work's been crazy, blah, blah, blah. I had never done it. So she comes back to me and she says, I asked you to do so-and-so, remember, and you still haven't done it. Now, what do your inner 5-year-olds say to that? Would you get off my case? Do you not see how hard I'm working around here? Trying to provide for this family? Y'all say junk like that too, right? Okay, good. Or else I'd start feeling shame, all right? Anyway, I've practiced a lot with this, and I've had a lot of therapy. So what happens is, I go, wait a minute. I'm feeling totally criticized. I'm feeling totally unappreciated. I'm feeling like she doesn't see all that I do. So instead of having a fit and calling her names, why don't I ask her if she does appreciate me? Like an adult. So I said, you're right. I haven't done that stuff. You did ask me, and I totally dropped the ball on that. Can I ask you a question? It's kind of like a, little 5-year-old guy is kind of beating me up inside. I have a question. She's like, yeah. I said, do you appreciate the things that I do around here? Like, do you appreciate the fact that I do try and that I've been working a lot? And I did drop the ball on that, but do you appreciate the other things? And she just melted. She said, oh my gosh, yes. And you really have been working so hard. I totally see that. And then she said, thank you for asking. Now, why did she act like that? Because I acted like a grown-up. And people like having relationships with grown-ups, okay? I heard my little kid acting up. He was about to take the wheel and go into the ditch. And I'm like, no. Love you, hear you, great kid, whatever. But I'm not going to let you drive. Driving's for grown-ups. And she backed down because people like being married to grown-ups, okay? So this is what I want you to get. Are you getting it? This is not a marriage problem. It's a software problem. It's a little kid problem. It's a trigger problem, all right? Fourth I, impulse control. Final ability we need to develop, and that most of us haven't developed, is the ability to have emotional management. In other words, can I feel a feeling without having to do a feeling? Can I have a feeling and back off and look at it and choose what to do rather than just reacting, okay? Basically, our culture is terrible at this. I mean, our culture basically is about 13 years old emotionally, okay? Psychosocial development. Think about the stock market, okay? It's driven by emotion. Economic indicators, my hind leg. It's fear and greed, It's emotion. I mean, our culture basically is always reactive. Let's go protest this or protest that, both sides of the political fence. If you look at our culture of psychosocial development, we're about 13. I mean, we bought all the toilet paper, for crying out loud. Who does that? We're a race of little people, okay, who have a feeling and cannot say, you know what? I've got a lot of toilet paper at home. I think I'll be okay. We're like, oh my gosh, everybody else is buying it. And we panic. We're completely emotionally driven, which is actually the thing that scares me most about our culture. Forget political differences. We're all 13 at best, okay? But anyway, you have to learn the ability to have an emotion and not do an emotion. Can you be stuck in a traffic jam and go, oh my gosh, this is so frustrating. I'm angry. I'm helpless. What else are you in a traffic jam? I'm scared I'm going to be late. You feel the feelings? Those are feelings, people. And they're running around inside of you. Now, most people don't know that. They just start honking their horn and try to U-turn in the median and blow their stack. In other words, they do their feelings, okay? So, guys, you're driving along and your wife says, turn right up here, honey. And we're like, look, I know how to drive, okay? And she's like, okay, sun's getting low, big guy. Sun's getting real low. Sun's going down, all right? Now, what happened there? Well, what happened was you felt a feeling implied by your wife's assistance, that you don't know how to get to the church by yourself. You need her assistance, poor little fella, okay? And you're like, my ancestors crossed the Alleghenies. I don't need your help getting to the church, I'm not 5 years old. Yes, you are, okay? I promise you are. In all four of these categories. So instead of thinking, wow, that really triggered something in me, I feel shame, I feel angry, I feel like I want to fight back, what's going on? We just pop, okay? Now, one of the reasons we do that is because we're sinners and it's kind of natural to us to be jerks. But another reason is because many of us weren't taught the ability to have an emotion and not have to act on it. All right. That's the Fantastic Four. What I want to do here in part one here tonight is give you a category for the places that you might have deficits. and the ways in which you can bring them into your relationship, and the ways in which that can screw your relationship up. Now, what I want you leaving here with is an awareness of, I need to start getting curious. I need to start asking and wondering, why is it that always ticks me off so much? Or why is it when he does that I feel so lonely and hopeless? What is that need that's going on there, okay? These are the basic building blocks for relationships, and these are also the places that it can go wrong. And I want you to have these as categories. Now, let's take